This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the town of North Haven.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 7th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. My name is Vern Carlson, and I am the chairman of the commission. We have two public hearings and a site plan for this evening, I believe. Let me just explain to you how things work. If you so don't know, the applicant will present the application, and the commission will get their questions answered, and then we'll open it up to the public. Anybody in the public will have a chance to speak in any respect that they want. We do have some things that are off. Let me go to staff. Alan, what is off?
Item number 3224 Quinnipiac Avenue is postponed to February, and item number 5332 State Street is postponed to February 4th.
Okay, if anybody's here for anything there, it'll be next month. Okay, let me introduce our staff. Andy Bellavacqua, out to my extreme right, and he's our town engineer. Next to him is Alan Fredrickson, is our land use administrator. To my extreme left is Mary Lee Radjuski. She is our court reporter, and Pam Miller is our staff secretary. With that, we'll go to the commission.
I'm Jim Giletti, regular member.
Teresa Ranciato Vili, regular member.
Ron Penton, Vice Chair.
Richard Wilson, Secretary.
Louis Morelli, alternate.
Joe Salamini, alternate.
Okay, with that being said, we're going to go right into a public hearing, which we're going to read in. Pam, I would like to take item 4, which is P18-43, along with the P18-43S. Okay. Rich, would you read in the call of the public hearing?
So P18-43S, special permit application of Timothy J. Lee Esquire, applicant Washington Avenue LLC, and 447 Washington Avenue LLC, owners relative to 441 Washington Avenue, map 90, lot 4, and 447 Washington Avenue, map 90, lot 7, plan entitled Proposed Multiple Use Development. 441/447 Washington Avenue, North Haven, Connecticut. Prepared by Malone and McBroom, dated November 8th, 2018. Scale is 1 inch to 20 feet. IL 30 zoning district.
Okay, with that being said, Tim, you want to
Sure.
start off?
Good evening, Happy New Year. My name is Tim Lee. I'm the applicant, but I'm here tonight on behalf of Bigliotti Construction, who is the proposed purchaser of these two properties. As the commission may be aware, we presented the application in great detail last month. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the commission continued the matter to today's date in order for us to address 3 issues. First issue was to submit a site plan showing parking in excess of 15% of what's required under the regulations. We have submitted a revised site plan that shows 205 parking spaces. That's 15% more than what is required under your zoning regulations. Secondly, we submitted a lighting plan for your review. The lighting plan was designed by Sullivan Architects. We got comments from Alan Fredrickson's office last week. One of the comments was there was a little light bleeding onto a neighboring property. He suggested that the commission could approve the lighting plan as a condition of approval. We've already corrected that deficiency. We sent revised plans to the town today that shows all the light is contained on our property. There's also a depiction of what the lighting fixtures would look like. Third issue the commission wanted to address was the affordability plan. As part of this application, as the commission is aware, when you enacted the zoning regulation, or amended the zoning regulation, you required that 20% of the units be deed restricted as affordable in compliance with Connecticut General Statute 8-30G. As part of the application, we submitted an affordability plan and affordable deed restriction so that those properties or those units would be deed restricted for a period of 4 years. That way, those units would count against the mandated 10% cap mandated by the state of Connecticut. We submitted the affordability plan. Jennifer Capola has been kind enough to review the affordability plan. I had a conversation with her this afternoon. A couple minor tweaks, but I think she's satisfied with the plan as amended, and she's here tonight if the commission wants to hear from her. I also have Steve Ditsko here. He is from Malone and McBroom. If the commission has any questions regarding the site plan, Steve can address those. Other than that, I think we've answered or addressed all the questions remaining from last month's hearing. Well, I will add the fourth issue. It wasn't an issue last month, but I did submit a cross easement for the property at 445 Washington, mutual easement between the two properties that allows us to drive over their property and for them to drive over our property. So with that said, I think we've addressed all the issues or concerns the commission had last month.
Very good, Tim. I'm going to introduce Jennifer Capola.
Let me just ask a question before we get there.
Go ahead.
The thing I want to know about the cross easement, when we were talking about your parking on the back of one of the buildings, wasn't the parking going to go between the two buildings? Does a cross easement solve that problem? Wasn't there an issue of...
Parking spaces were all on our property, but to back into the parking spaces, you need to go on the other property. Correct.
So that's what the easement does, it allows it to go across in order to get into the parking space?
Correct.
Okay.
Jim, the other thing that they provided, I don't recall what he mentioned this, was that a supplementary plan from Ray Sullivan, the architect, and it shows the kind of that easement area and what the layout on both properties would be to demonstrate that it would work.
Okay, so you're comfortable that it'll work as well?
Yeah, I am, based on that plan, yes.
Okay. That's good.
Good, Jim?
You can answer.
Okay, this is Jennifer Capola, our town attorney.
I did make some record.
She is going to be here tonight to explain exactly what the affordability plan is all about.
It is very straightforward in terms of the proposed revisions that I had, and applicant's counsel and I did speak about them. He's in agreement. I did make some housekeeping changes as well in terms of the affordability plan to make it clearer. There are only 3 substantive revisions. I did make a red line copy so that the commission has a copy of it so you could see what changes were made. The other thing that I thought was important is I did speak to somebody at the Department of Housing because I wanted to make certain that from a state level that there's nothing else in terms of enforcement mechanisms that we could potentially use. I did obtain that confirmation. I just want to take you very quickly, it'll take me just 2 minutes, through the substantive so you could kind of see and get a sense of why I proposed the changes that I did, and then just speak to you briefly about that discussion that I had with the gentleman at the Department of Housing. Okay? But I did make copies, but just because I think it's easier. There's not very much at all. What's contained in the affordability plan is pretty typical of what I've seen, because I've reviewed others for North Haven as well as other towns. Once they get around, you're going to go to page 2.
Somebody keep them all? Page 2.
You'll see in subsection 5, I've added some language to the third sentence. It says the administrator shall submit a written status report to the commission. And then I added certifying to the commission that the development continues to be in compliance. That's the statutory language. It's not that they just provide you with a written status report, but that they actually provide you with a certification on an annual basis that their development is in compliance with the law. So I added that language. And then on page 8 and 9, page 8 first, in subsection 14, you'll see that I added some language at the end. This is the section entitled Change of Income or Qualifying Status of Tenant of Rental Unit, and it contemplates a situation where you have a tenant, because these are rental units, where you have a tenant who all of a sudden doesn't qualify. What happens? And it dictates what the process is going to be. I've added to make it clearer at the end where it says if the tenant elects to remain in the unit at the market rate, because that's an option, they can remain at the market rate, then the administrator shall offer the next available unit as an affordable unit if necessary in order for the development to comply with the minimum 30 units set aside for affordable units. So I wanted to get in there again, the compliance, that this is supposed to be 30 units of affordable housing. So long as these procedures are followed, the project shall not be out of compliance with the minimum. I added, however, no provision herein shall be interpreted as relieving the administrator, developer, owner, or manager, or their successors or assigns of their or its obligation to comply with the covenants and deed restrictions required by 8-30G and this affordability plan. And the North Haven Planning and Zoning Commission shall retain all rights and remedies conveyed by the Connecticut General Statutes, including Section 8-30H, to determine and attain compliance with said covenants and restrictions in this plan. Now, 8-30H is the statute right after 8-30J, and it has to do with compliance and set-aside developments, which this is. And it allows you to look at the administrator's records with regard to the tenant's income qualification. So it dictates in a rental setting what the process is in terms of getting compliance. So I added that. I thought it was important to add. And then under enforcement, I also added, if you look at the next provision, this is on the bottom of page 8, and this is really the second to last substantive, because I did something on the next section as well, section 16. But for section 15, which is the enforcement provision, I added it, originally it only mentioned 8-12. I added sections 8-3 and 8-30H. Again, I explained to you what 8-30H is. Now, 8-12 is the usual enforcement mechanism. That's the statute that dictates the procedure of being able to go in and get injunctive relief and get a fine and everything else if property owner is in violation of the regs. But 8-30 is actually the statute, and you may have some familiarity with this already, but 8-3F is the provision of the statutes that allows the withholding of zoning approval of a building permit or certificate of occupancy. So I added that in as well, because I do believe that that's another mechanism that can be used if there is non-compliance. There's a very old affordable housing case, like the only case at all that talks about enforcement of affordability plans, and it talks about 8-3F in addition to 8-12 and 8-30H. It's the Kaufman case. I probably talked to you about it way back when we were going through the whole CMB application process and the settlement of that. On the next page, page 9, and this is the last substantive change I made or proposed and was accepted. At the very end of the affordability plan that you received in December was the deed restriction that's going to get recorded on land records. It bothered me that this section didn't say when it was going to be actually recorded. That's a big gaping hole. So, and I've seen it before, but you want to make sure that everything is clear in terms of what the process is going to be. So the deed restriction as drafted in Schedule C, and I did a little tweaking of that as well, just to correct some minor things. It's going to get recorded on the land records prior to issuance of the initial zoning permit approval for the development. So everybody may know this, probably, that in order to get a building permit, you need to have zoning approval. So Laura actually looks at every building permit application, except some applications like for mechanicals. But your standard building permit, she looks at all of them and she issues zoning approval on them. They get the permit gets circulated. So before it ever gets issued by building, Laura is reviewing it, and if there's a violation that's present at the property, then she's not gonna sign off on it. So in this circumstance, if somebody's not, in compliance, she wouldn't sign off on it. So again, this idea of that, when they go to get a permit, I mean, in terms of, and I kind of digressed a little bit, but that's sort of the appropriate time, that when the initial building permit gets issued for the whole development, that's, when it's appropriate to actually have that on the land records. So, it's available for tenants to see and so on and so forth. So, those are really the only substantive changes. So I did talk to, again, Mike Santoro. He's the Director of Policy, Research, and Housing at the Department of Housing. And he was very helpful because he confirmed to me, these are the only enforcement mechanisms that you have. He assured me, that the town will get credit as long as the deed restrictions are in place and, everything's being followed. The town will get credit for the affordable units of housing. And we talked too about whether or not he's ever had experience of being involved in an enforcement action, because I've looked at this issue several times, but I did research it again. I have yet to find a case in terms of something either that's been reported or Superior Court case where it's been brought on the basis that a property owner is not in compliance with an affordable housing deed restriction. And he said basically they never get there. Because at the end of the day, what happens is once, eyes are laid upon it, once it's discovered, there's compliance. So it never really reaches that point in his experience. So hopefully, you'll experience that with this development. But I'm satisfied, that as it is and agreed upon with the revisions that you have before you, that it's sufficient. Okay.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you very much. Just going to hold on, see if anybody's got any questions for you here. Jim, do you have any questions for Jennifer?
I do.
Yeah.
So here's my concern. It's good that the deed will be done. I thought it was implied it had to be done before all got done anyway. But what worries me is like when you look at what you have on the second page, that they're going to give us a written status report. You change the language to make that they're certifying that the commission, that development continues to be in compliance. And then what happens when you get a report that says this certifies that the development's in compliance? That's the whole report. Do they have to give us more than that?
Well, you certainly have, if you have any suspicion
I don't want
that there's
to do
not.
I want them to tell me, that they're in, not just by giving me a compliance, but giving me a report of, I don't want people's names and I don't want to know individuals' incomes.
You actually do have rights to that, but
Yeah, I know, but
that's
that's fine.
E-38,
But as long as they can say,
yeah, not
that for the
FOIable,
X,
yeah.
so-and-so, I'm not looking to invade people's privacy. But what worries me is that language allows this developer or another new developer to come in and say, oh, we're in compliance. And what brought this all about is, we've had other issues where we've had affordable projects, and the reporting back to us has been deficient. So how do we solve that?
I think you solve it by asking for the information.
What does that mean? What allows me to ask for the information here?
I think that you have the ability, depending on what is submitted, to ask for more information. Of course you do.
And what if they don't do it?
Then I think that you can ask your zoning enforcement officer to send a letter to ask to examine their books and records.
And that's been woefully inadequate. That's what
Well,
my
that
concern
should,
is.
in terms of getting.
What happens when the applicant,
in
not
terms-
the applicant, but
I'm sorry.
the developer just says, ignores that
Well,
request?
Is that where we can go to Superior
there's no
Court?
question, but just,
Exactly. I think you can, absolutely, because I think that you have a right to examine the books and records pursuant to the statute. I think if that is true, then that's a matter that should be handed over to me. If your enforcement officer makes such a request, and, does not get the appropriate response of the information that the commission desires to satisfy the commission that the development is in compliance with the affordability plan, then I think it follows the same path that any enforcement would follow. And that would be, she's not satisfied, she sends it to me.
Yeah, but the problem is, where does this tell me or tell the developer, this is the information you have to give us?
Well,
I don't know
yeah.
what to ask
Yeah.
for. That's
Yeah.
what kind of, so how do we say to them, listen, you gotta show us, not just tell us you're in compliance, not that I don't trust you, but, that's, I want you to show me that you're in compliance. Give me the
One of
details.
the things that we bandied about was to just say, the developer shall be required to submit any information that the commission finds necessary to prove compliance.
Well, but
Or
that's,
to that
but that's,
effect.
but you're then putting the onus on us to figure out what to ask for.
So you're
What
talking
I'm
about a
saying is,
baseline
yeah,
information.
right now, annually,
Yeah.
they're supposed to give us something.
What would
All
that
I
be?
see that they gotta give us is a one-line thing saying we're in compliance.
Hmm.
I want more than a one-line thing saying we're in compliance. I want them to show me that they're in compliance, not violate any privacy, but I want them to show me that they're in compliance. Say, these units have been done at 80%, 20%. You understand what I want it
yes,
to be in there,
you-
that they have
you-
to do that
you,
affirmatively, not by us asking for it.
So
That's what I'm looking
you want to perhaps know on what dates, if the affordable units receive certificates of occupancy and that
Like every
sort of
January, they
thing.
gotta come to us and say, these are the affordable units, and they fall under 80, 20, whatever the language is, so that we can establish that whoever they are now or who they'll be in the future, are gonna come to us every January and give us a report saying, here's your report of the stat, not just we're in compliance, because I don't necessarily believe them, not you.
Then,
I just have one.
yeah.
Well,
I don't have a problem in providing the information that you're asking for, saying units 10, 20, 12 are affordable units. The one concern I have is when you're dealing with the affordable units, you're not supposed to quote-unquote stigmatize the people who
get
are
it.
living in affordable units. So I
Right.
don't want to make that public information. I can certainly provide it to the council to be held, and my only concern is making that information public. I
Yeah,
understand
but-
you want it and for your purposes, and I don't have a problem providing it to the commission for their purposes.
I get it, and I'm not looking to cause anybody any privacy
Right.
concerns and stigmatizing anybody, but I want to know that the developer is in compliance, and just giving me a certificate doesn't do it for me, because we've had people say to us, yes, we have, and we have some serious questions about it. I'd like them to come, and it doesn't have to be unit 12, 30, we have 30 units, and then if we suspect that's not accurate, we can go look for it. But I think they should be able to say, we have this many, somewhere the language should be more specific of what they need to give us January 1st. That's what I would like to see. Because I'm afraid 3 years from now, January 1st, like many other things where we've been told things are going to given to us every year, they're going to be given to us every year. So what happens when they don't?
I suggest that what be added in terms of language, and Attorney Lee can comment on this, but where it says submit a written status report to the North Haven Planning and Zoning Commission, that the words in a format approved by the commission certifying be added. So that way, if it becomes necessary to change the format of the information that you're requiring, we can do that. I don't want to enumerate and suggest some exhaustive list. I don't think that would necessarily serve the commission's best interest to address what specifically you're concerned about.
And let me say this, because I had this discussion with one of our other board members. I don't care if you guys work, do you understand what I'm looking for? I don't want to get on January 1st a one-line report saying we're in compliance. I want to know how you're in compliance, in some way that you're okay with doing it. And you can work it out between the two, I don't care. But that's what my concerns are about. This is what gave rise to the whole enforceability thing. I don't see any reason you won't do it. You told us the way the income works, there's no reason for you not to do it. But maybe there will be a reason in the future not to do it. So I want to get a report that really says, this is how we're doing it.
And for instance, would you be satisfied if that said, we hereby certify that we are in compliance with the affordability plan in that 27 out of the 150 units are rented to individuals who qualify I mean, is that,
You could, like I said, you can work out any language you want, and then you can add the language that she's talking about and say, if you're not happy with that, you can ask for more detail or whatever the heck you want. That would be fine with me. But I just want to make sure that we're going to get something we can actually look at and say, they really are doing it.
okay.
All right? That was my
That works.
input on it. That's why, and I appreciate your looking into this. I think this helps, but I worry about the enforceability of it. I hear what the guy from the housing has said, but we've had some enforceability issues, and how it gets advertised and where it goes and the people finding out about it and whether it's actually done. So I want to be able to confirm that it's really happening. Besides, the first part of it is get us credit for those units. We've taken care of that. Now I just want reporting to work.
There are some specific, and this was already in there, but I don't know if you read through it in its entirety. But in terms of the marketing,
Yeah, I know, I saw.
there are some very specific
Yeah,
requirements.
which runs
so-
with the other ones, but that's the
Yeah.
other thing. Are they compliant with that, so.
Okay.
So that would take, if they can work that out, I'm good.
For exhibit purposes, I am going to give Mr. Frederickson, this is just for the record, a copy of the red line version as well as a copy of the version with all those changes that were agreed upon accepted. So those will be marked as exhibits. I don't know what exhibit numbers or letters you're on at this point.
I'm not really sure what we submitted. I just prefer to go Exhibit 2 because it's the second meeting, and then you can
Teresa?
go with A and B and whatever you have.
No, I did not.
Any questions for Jennifer?
For Jennifer,
To just mark them Exhibit 2-A, 2-B. You have two items.
Yes, I do. Yeah, so the red line will be 2A.
Sure.
Do you have any questions for, do you have any questions for us?
No, I think Jennifer covered everything.
Okay, good. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Let's see what next January.
Jennifer, the commission seems to be totally satisfied with your presentation, and I thank you very much for taking care of this for me. Okay, very good. Well, we'll move forward. Tim?
Yes.
Okay, so you provided everything that we asked for, and there was a question that Alan talked about on the lighting, that there was Alan, just where, he made a note in his comments about there was some spillage on,
Correct.
about that.
And
Yes.
he suggested that that be addressed as a condition of approval.
Yes, it's gonna be in there.
We've already submitted a revised plan to
They-
Alan that shows that
All right,
that
well, I
corrects
didn't know
that
that.
issue.
They did, and at 2:43 this afternoon, I received an email from Ray Sullivan with a new plan attached as PDF. I reviewed that plan, and the three hot spots have been eliminated, so there's no light trespass that would equal or exceed 1 foot candle any longer.
Okay, so that's taken care of. All right, so that's taken care of. I guess there's nothing else in there at all. It's just gonna be incorporated in the approval, or whatever the case may be.
Sure. So thank you for the time, and thank you for allowing us to come back tonight to address those issues.
Okay.
Was there a particular plan they've resubmitted, so their active site plan is the site plan that shows the 15%
Right.
extra parking? Is that what you'd
Is that what
be
you guys want?
acting on? Is that,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be on the 15%, that's what we
Is here-
got.
That's what we had said last meeting.
And that shows
Well, yeah.
205 parking
Was the
spaces.
15%.
I thought what we said was that we wanted to see the 15 to
Right.
see how it compared to the 20.
You'd like the 20?
Well,
Take a look at
I
the,
was planning on discussing it during deliberation,
Okay.
but
okay.
Would you like me to have Steve
Well,
Disco just run through the
that's-
changes on the site
That
plan
would be
to
great.
how we accommodated the 15%?
To show us the differences between the 15
Well,
and
you gotta
20
show it
right
now, so we
now.
can talk
The
about
only-
it.
Yeah.
the only reason that I mentioned, I just want to be clear about a couple of things. A plan that's now sort of on the table, which came in with the most recent submission, just requires more islands per your regulations. So there's a couple of locations where there are too many spaces in a row per your regulations, which the limit would be 16, but we've got 23, 21, 23 in another location or what have you. So we've got to get an island in there. We need a couple of islands in some other spots as well. So I don't have any issue with the plan, assuming that my comment, every 16 spaces, we've got to have an island, and at the ends of all rows of parking, we need an island. You might lose 5 or 6 spaces.
Well, can we provide that?
You might. So, so if you want to go with a larger,
We're gonna discuss it
percentage
now.
of extra.
We want to talk about it. Let's talk about it right now.
it's going to drop back a few. I don't know if that makes sense, but after I get done with it, if they get an approval and they resubmit, it's going to be 5 or 6 spaces fewer, unless they have another way to do it, that they can get those in and not.
I'm confused, because I thought we were supposed to have the choice between the two plans, and they were actually, we could see what we would have and what we wouldn't have. Are you saying that there would have to be something done yet again?
Yeah, I'm saying that one of my typical comments is make sure there are islands at the ends of all rows of parking in every 16 spaces, and there are a few that would need to be added. It's not a problem, but because you're discussing a fine line issue of 10% more.
Right.
Right.
That's gonna be,
15, 20, it's going to be a little bit back. I don't have any issue with that, but it's just going to be a little lower than the total that's there.
Maybe if I could put that in context. for you
Sure, by all means.
If I might, sure. For the record, Steve Ditzko from Malone and McBroom, DIETZKO, professional engineer. Our traffic engineer was here last meeting before the holiday and talked about the traffic, but he may not have gone into much detail. We did a parking study using ITE data and took a look at the commercial and retail square footages, the bedroom count, and we took a look at what ITE would say would be an appropriate number of parking spaces. So ITE comes up with 174 parking spaces as the peak parking demand for the proposed development as shown. When I spoke to your town planner and town engineer early on, one of their comments was, gee, it'd be interesting to see how that compares, how our parking formula compares to ITE or other standards. Well, your parking formula requires 179 parking spaces. So your parking formula is pretty much on par with ITE, perhaps a little in excess of that. At the 15% surplus plan that we currently have, which is depicted here, you have 205 parking spaces. So that's 31 additional spaces more than ITE. And if I do my math correctly, that's 26 additional spaces over and above what your regulation would require. Giving it some context. I have an exhibit that would show that. I'm not sure, Tim, if that graphic study, we can certainly submit that. That exhibit shows how the parking demand varies. Obviously it's at the lowest in the middle of the day for a primarily residential parcel property. It's at peak at night and early morning when people are at home in their units. That's when it peaks at the 174. So this plan shows 205 parking spaces at the 15% surplus.
But what Alan is saying is if you go back and have to put the islands in as per our regs, we're going to drop down another below 200 for sure.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact count would be. Maybe Alan does, but.
No.
Well, yeah, with the 15%, you're showing 205. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm showing a need for five islands. There might be a way to do it with 4, something like that. So you'd be at 200 based on that. There may be a way to to slide the island in and what have you, but
So what would the net loss be? if the-
I think you're looking at a maximum of 5.
5 spaces lost?
Yeah, 5 spaces lost, yeah.
Okay, I got it.
So there might be a way to do it with only 4 lost.
I got it.
Okay.
We'd still be down to about 200, and we need
Yeah,
179.
good. Right, okay,
So,
depending on.
We're still
Yeah,
over, we
calculation
won't be
you
over
use.
15% or
Yeah.
20% wrong.
I understand the math.
Well, okay, well,
I can count.
let's get in there a little bit and figure this out.
I think at the last meeting, at least I saw some push and pull from perhaps some members were intrigued by the additional green space. Other members
Right.
wanted more parking.
And you have the bike racks in there too, right?
We have bike racks, that's correct. Yes, we have those.
What is your pleasure, Commission? So we can wrap this up somewhere along the way. so we
I leave it the
couldn't-
way it is.
Huh?
I leave it the way it
Well,
is.
you-
Like,
let me ask you-
they're sharing driveways, you put more obstacles in there, like more islands. When they gotta move snow or something, they're a pain in the neck, let's face it.
Well, we can't help but the islands, that's our regs. We can't
Look,
say.
they
we
gotta,
can
they gotta
change
go in, they gotta go in. But, if we got
We
205,
can't change it.
You could change it, you can't change it tonight. But I understand.
yeah, but we can, if you wanna change it, we'll change it.
The reg is what it is tonight.
Yeah.
That's what, no, it can't be changed tonight.
No.
Ron, where are you on this?
Well, I don't have any questions for the applicant. It comes
Right.
down to just a choice between the 15 to 20%. There's pros and cons each way, and that's
Right.
what we'll vote on.
So I think we talked about it in deliberation, right?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
good enough. Thank you.
By me, thank you.
Okay. Okay, Commission, you all set?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, is anyone here who'd like to speak in opposition to this application? Well, we'll get to that, Mary. Okay, anyone here in opposition? Anyone here in favor? Mary? Now we get to the question.
Mary White, Summer Lane. Last time we met, I had, I think it was 18 questions, and I would say half were answered, which was great. Good explanation about the fire suppression, and so I'm pleased with those answers. And I was just wondering if I could get the rest of the questions answered. It's basically, the questions have to do mostly with I wanted to know how close excuse me, are the train tracks to the nearest building with the apartments. Let's see. So a concern I had when the West Upper Washington Avenue multi-use zone was proposed was the noise and shaking created when the train goes by. And I have been over there at 344 Washington Avenue when a train went by on numerous times, and it's very noisy and the building did shake. Let's see. So can they answer how many of the apartments will be located in the building or the back of the buildings near the train tracks? Do they plan on using any noise canceling construction materials for those apartments that are located the closest to the train tracks? Let's see. I just wanted to double check. I was curious about how they were going to heat the buildings. I'm assuming it's gas. I wanted to know if they had given any consideration to incorporating solar into their plan. And I wanted to know how many one-bedrooms are they proposing? How many two-bedrooms are they proposing? Are there any three-bedrooms being proposed? And my last question is regarding a concern that another resident brought up, and that is the water pressure concerns. He stated he lives in the flats and they already have low pressure. So I wanted to know if in the future the flats find that their water pressure is lowered due to this development, what is their course of action? What can be done? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Tim?
With regard to the construction of the building and the materials, when we were here last month, the commission heard from Ray, I think Ms. White raised some of those identical issues, and Ray Sullivan, who is the project architect, was here, and he described the building materials and what was going to be used, and I think he already answered that question. Steve Ditsko is just going to get a rough estimate as to the distance from the buildings to the train tracks, but keep in mind that the building at 445 is between our buildings and the train tracks as well, so there is a significant difference between those two properties. With regard to the unit count of the buildings, there's going to be 12 two-bedroom units, 132 one-bedroom units, and 6 studio units. And with regard to the water pressure, that question was raised last month too. Steve Ditsko answered that question to the satisfaction of most of the commission members. And I think the issue is his professional opinion was that there was enough water pressure to service the developments along Washington Avenue. And if there's a problem with the water pressure further down the line, it wasn't going to be caused by this development. It would be caused by something that maybe the water company would have to address with their pipes. So I'm not sure. I think I covered everything Mary had asked, but if there's something else, I'm happy to try to address it.
The noise canceling, or is that?
Well, I think the architect addressed that last
Okay.
month, and there are windows that are in place.
okay, you're right.
Yeah, and the construction materials and stuff like
There
that.
was just a question about the distance from the railroad, based on Ray Sullivan's submitted plan.
It's about 230 feet.
That's where I am, about 200 feet from the right-of-way, so to the tracks a little farther, yeah.
Any solar, any green?
There's no solar, it will be served by gas. If you recall, the plan showed rooftop gardens and rooftop decking for the people who live there as kind of an outdoor space, so that would take up the other space that would be occupied by solar panels. So we elected to make it living space as opposed to solar panel space.
So when you say 230 feet, it's from the back of the lower building back to the train station, back to the train tracks? Yeah, from there back. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the exact corner that would be closest, that top.
And I think she was asking, said, do you know approximately how many units are on the backside? That's the ones that are most exposed to the trains, if they're exposed. About. But there's the back building is still behind that, right? The other building that's not part of this development is still
Sure is.
between the train tracks and this development.
Partially, yeah.
Yeah, like over off to the side.
445.
Yeah. Right, yeah. Just curious, because I thought that's one of the things Mary was asking.
Looks like 6 per floor,
Right.
times 4 floors with the garage on the bottom,
Yeah,
24 units.
24 units is the
Right.
answer. Yep.
okay. I'm with her, I think the trains can be loud too, but, you know, people are gonna rent it or not rent it. It's a train track problem.
Yeah. Okay, does that answer your questions, Mary?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Tim, good. Oh, anyone else? No questions? Everybody's satisfied? Commission, you're satisfied? Alan?
I'm good.
Good.
Okay. Focus on this side. I'm gonna close this public hearing. Okay, this public hearing is closed. Okay,
Zone change.
yeah, we're gonna do that zone change on Universal, 120 Universal Drive. It's from retail to,
Oh, wait, what happened to the
Huh?
second application?
There's a second public hearing.
oh, there's,
It's the zone change regulation.
oh my goodness, yes, okay, thank you. Yeah, Rich, would you read that in, please?
Which one is it?
1841.
Item 2,
1841, yeah.
P 18-41, applicant of Godfrey N. Gordon, applicant proposed amendment to the North Haven zoning regulation to amend section 5.1.1.4 to modify lot area recommendations for hotels, apartment hotels, motels in an IL, that's a light industry zoning district. Proposed amendment is on file in the land use office and in the office of the town clerk.
Hey, good evening. Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Gordon. I'm president of Codaspodi and Associates, doing business at 263 Boston Post Road in the town of Orange. And what I just want to do is first submit copies of the application that was submitted and filed in the town clerk's office. Okay. As required by statute, when we submit, these things do have to be put on file with the town clerk. What we are requesting is a very minor amendment to your regulation for hotel use in the IL zone. And what it really comes down to is the zone that is there is probably the vestige of an old regulation back in the day when most hotels were built as 1 or 2 story exterior corridor hotels spread out quite a bit. This generation of hotels that are being built now basically are going up. Representing a developer who constructs Hilton products. We have a 4-story hotel currently under construction in the town of Orange, and that's a 121 unit hotel, and what they're hoping to develop here in North Haven, it would be approximately 105 room Hampton Inn and Suites. The situation is, the way the regulation is currently constituted is you need 2,000 square feet of land area for each individual guest unit. So as most hotels, you want to have a minimum of about 100 guest rooms. That would require us to be spread out quite a bit. In that regard, that would require us to have obviously 200,000 square feet or 4.5 acres or so. While that might be good on a 1 or 2 story hotel where you have 50 units or you're on septic, to build now, again, the current generation going up at 4 stories, that would require us to have quite a bit more land. So what we're recommending is you leave your regulation intact for the 1 and 2 story hotels that are currently probably the Best Western. But for the new generation of hotels where we try to incentivize to go up, we would change that to 1,000 square feet of land area per individual guest unit for buildings with 3 or more stories. In the surrounding town, in the town of Wallingford, they don't have a land area requirement as such. They have a requirement that you have either 150 guest rooms or you have a minimum building floor area of 60,000 square feet. And other towns that we work in, this is a little bit unusual for us. That's why we think it's a vestige of an older regulation. But we're trying to, again, to develop something more contemporary. And I know that the Hilton products all are 4 stories and above. What happens to the older units when they're lower, they wind up downgrading the flag at times. There's an old Hampton Inn in Meriden off of I-91, which has been now made into a Red Roof Inn, which is kind of taking your Cadillac, and then we go down to an Oldsmobile, then we go down to a Buick, to a Chevrolet Pontiac, and heaven forbid a Saturn, where they just are obsolete. So the purpose here, again, is just to be more current, to be able to build what we're actually specifically looking at. And I know that when you're looking at a text amendment, you don't really look at a site plan, but you just want to make sure it makes planning sense.
It helps.
But it helps. We don't have a crystal ball, we just have a rear view mirror usually.
Right.
But what we're looking at is we have a contractual interest in about a 2.5 acre portion of the Cinemark property out on Universal Drive, right adjacent to the Chick-fil-A site there. And in all honesty, they're not going to sell us 5 acres. The best that we could do is 2.5 acres. And for this specific project, in order for it to fly, that's why we're bringing in this text amendment. But going forward, you're going to want to attract higher-end users. Best Western, Ramada Inn, Holiday Inn Express, now Best Western, and that's what happens as they get older. The requirements of the flagship become more and more restrictive. We have a mix of suites and rooms now, that's the currency, and extended stay components, and you do allow for that in your regulation, but that's where the industry is going, and we'd love to be able to develop a project here in North Haven.
So this will be in the Hilton world, but we don't know exactly what Hilton it'll be. What-
No, well, it would most likely be a Hampton Inn and Suites building.
Oh, okay, all right,
Which is, the one that we have in Orange is a Homewood Suites.
right.
But that's all part, they have Home 2, they have a whole variety of different areas. And in all honesty, since the Meriden Hampton Inn flag was gone, that they really want to get back into this market here
Okay.
with one. So that's, Hilton's excited to be here, and we hope to be able to develop here. So again, we're leaving your 1- and 2-story regulation untouched, but in order to create an incentive for a higher-end unit to go up, we need to modify and make a provision for a slightly higher density.
Just so that I know, how high can they go? What is
The
our regulation
ILM, they
on
can get 60 feet, so it's not a story limit, but a height limit.
So essentially 5 or 6 stories now.
You can get 5, really.
Yeah, right.
Our
Okay.
hotel's usually about 55 feet. We have a pretty significant first floor, because
Right.
you have a lodge there, you have the swimming pool, fitness room and whatnot, and then the floor-to-floor on floors 2 through 4 are more
So you're
uniform.
essentially saying that it'll be a 4-story.
It'd be a 4-story building. And basically, not that you can see too well from here, but this is the 2019 prototype that they utilize. So at a time when we come in with a site plan, a special permit application, we'll go in detail to the colors, materials, and all the parking requirements as needed. But without the regulation, it's kind of like a non-starter
Now,
for us.
as I recall, at Cinemark, there are several pads, right? So Chick-fil-A went on one of the pads. This is the pad then closest to Chick-fil-A's, essentially. Is that right? And then aren't there a couple more out to the side, up by the car dealer?
I think this would break the pattern of what was shown in those pads, which were kind of just intended to demonstrate what might go on. This would be, in relative terms, out towards the road.
Yeah, right.
But closest to the car dealer on that really in the far northeastern
Oh, really?
corner of the site. So it'd be north of, Jeff, maybe you could show them where Chick-fil-A is.
Chick-fil-A
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
right here.
And Chick-fil-A is a separate lot, so there are currently 3 lots because the property's been split.
So this building, you know, there's a driveway that you can go into the theater up next to the car dealer.
Oh, yeah, yep,
It's right adjacent to that is what we're talking about?
Yeah.
absolutely,
There's a driveway
yeah.
right there,
I did not understand. Okay.
right, and then we'd be right here, and then we have a 48-inch concrete pipe that kind of bifurcates the site, so we have to get snug in there to one side.
So you see what Jeff shows in the center of his plan, below the hotel plan, there's still 2 pad buildings, correct?
Right.
So they would do a lot line revision, so they wouldn't do another subdivision. They would just revise that 3rd lot and dump the excess back into the Cinemark lot.
So, but your client would literally buy this property?
That's
They
my
would- They would
understanding.
own the property,
Yes.
Not
so
a
Mark would
yes.
no longer own it?
Right, the rest of the Cinemark site would be pad leases.
Right, but this you guys would own?
Hilton doesn't like them to.
They don't want to
They
lease
want,
it.
they want a
I probably prefer that anyway.
tangible.
There might be a shot at getting another lot split off. I couldn't say that it
How
would
will
be
it work?
impossible,
Yeah.
but there might be a way to get another one in the front. But they're not proposing that, that would be
And as you
something-
travel, I do agree, I think you do see these hotels down in the middle of, like, shopping centers.
Okay.
You know, someplace where they can go, and they can go to Chick-fil-A, and they go to the movies, and they go to the things up and down the street, so.
That's
Does
been
look
my
like the trend.
experience, that
Yeah.
that is the site selection process at this point.
Oh, that's what you
I
find.
could understand it, I
Yeah, right.
suppose.
So with this proposed change in zoning, you'd still be able to site the building and the parking, meeting all the other
Yes.
zoning requirements for setbacks and buffers.
Setbacks to 75%, and the green space requirement in the front setback, the things of that nature, we backed into it so we have the right amount of land.
You agree with that, Alan?
I have no clue, other than to say that Mr. Gordon has done a great deal of preliminary work on this in terms of trying to make certain that they will have enough room to put his client's hotel on here when they're done. So I haven't reviewed any site plans per se, but I believe that a significant effort's been made, sure.
Anything else?
I have no
Commission?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, okay. Alan? Randy? No? Okay. Anyone here like to speak in favor of this? Okay, Mary, you're up again.
Mary White, Summer Lane, still on Summer Lane. So I am, first I'd like to thank Alan Frederickson for taking the time to speak with me on the phone about this amendment. So I have a concern when an amendment is proposed that would affect the whole town. I think we should pause and just, think about it. I like the idea of a contemporary hotel on Universal in front of Cinemark. My concern is that the amendment would be for the whole town, so all the light industrial zones. And so my concern is that this type of construction, this building, could pop up elsewhere in town in another light industrial zone that would be too close to residential. We know we have residents who live next door to light industrial zones, and they live right next door to industrial zones. So what I'd like to propose to the commission is an idea, and that idea is to allow for this amendment, which is to reduce the square footage required for the hotel units, going up to, what did it say, 2 to 3 stories from 2,000 square feet to 1,000 square feet, but to limit it to Universal Drive. So in the future, say there is interest for this type of hotel, say Upper Washington Avenue, then the interested applicants could come before the Planning and Zoning and propose an amendment for that location. So this way, I feel the residents would be protected. So that's my thoughts.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone in favor? Anyone opposed? Any questions? Alan, you want to speak to that? Would it be for the whole town, just Universal Drive? It would be for that one area.
Well, you have an applicant who has requested that a particular text amendment be approved. I don't know, they are very targeted in their site. What Mary's proposing is something that I think Mr. Gordon's client, it would have no impact on him or his project. At this time, it's kind of, I guess, up to them, if that's agreeable. As far as Upper Washington Avenue, there are different problems up Washington Avenue than there are in Universal Drive. Universal Drive has a large estuary behind it. There's an incredible buffer on the west side relative to residential properties. you're all the way across the estuary, you have all of the east side of State Street, you have the west side of State Street, commercial, you got a long way, you've got 5,000 feet before you hit a residential property. So you also have a pretty good distance over to the east, and you have a very wide right-of-way on I-91 that protects those residential properties. Again, I don't think there's going to be any impact on Universal Drive. If you're to take this amendment and put it on the Upper Washington Avenue, you could have some impacts up there in terms of residential properties. You still have all the Quinnipiac River Park, all that to the west, but on the east, you're a lot closer.
Mary has a good idea.
Does it make any sense to limit it? I don't know, it could. I don't think it would affect the project that they are proposing that you see on that board.
Would it bother you at all?
Generally speaking, we have done regulations where we target access. We even put dates on it. If you have parcels, so people don't assemble parcels at some later date. We talk about parcels that exist as of a certain date. There's a lot of different ways to craft regulations. I will say that it's been my experience that a lot of commissions don't like a developer coming in and taking a legislative act that you usually reserve for yourself. The commission could, I'm not sure about amending this that's been advertised and reviewed and whatnot, but the commission could take it upon themselves and modify its regulation any way they see fit on their own benefit. But right now, this is an application. Bear in mind that in any IL district near residential area, you can go 60 feet today, as of right. So the impacts to residences already exist on those zones here. We're just asking for a hotel use.
And I get what he's saying, and Mary, I understand what you're saying as well, and we're very cognizant of our industrial districts that are next to people's homes, and we've been very proactive about protecting those homes, and we will continue to be. I'm concerned with trying to get this developer to change this now, and I think we start getting into a little bit of spot zoning if we say just this road. You know, I don't know that we can do that, but we could look at it, our own regulations, like we should look at a lot of them. My inclination would be to leave this alone, only because, you know, this is the first step, and then they come to us. And I get what you're saying as of right, but we've gone down the road where there's things that have been as of right, and where it's gonna have a real impact on the neighborhood. We get involved in whether we're gonna approve something that's gonna have a real adverse impact. So I don't see the concern as being one that I would make all the changes to the language. That's just me. I don't think I would, and then we gotta, if you make the changes to the language of the regulation, he's gotta go and give it notice to everybody out there again and have to do it again, and I think they wanna get going. That's the way it gets me.
There are definitely some concerns with that. The offer before you is what you see.
Yeah, right.
So there's definitely some issues with that.
I mean, we had
You are
some
holding
light
this-
industrial on Saco Point Road, and we said no to something that didn't fit. I don't think we're gonna see a lot of hotels there, but,
And you are holding the special permit.
yeah, exactly.
Well, that's it.
So we still have some leverage,
Special
not
permit is
perfect,
damn
but we have some leverage.
Special
That's
permit,
the way I
you
see
can,
it.
buffers, lighting, all those
Yeah,
other
right.
things you control.
I
traffic.
thought we had it covered pretty well, but it's certainly a good thought.
I always understand there's a concern when there's a change.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Well,
if
you're
there were
right, the
ne- But if there were never
regulations
changes in zoning, we'd be living in caves, Quonset huts, and teepees too, so things change.
Sure. Mary, are you satisfied with that?
No.
So if this goes through and there is no, the protection for residents in another location where somebody could come in, so the protection would be that they would come in and they would say, hey, you allow this under your regulations, so we are providing an application per your regulations. So what we would, I'm just trying to understand, so the neighbors would say, hey, I don't want that density. I understand that a hotel already, as written in the regulations, could go up there, but not in this density. See, we're talking about going from 2,000 square feet down to 1,000 square feet. So that's the difference. So what would be the protection? Because the new applicant would say, hey, this is per your regulations.
Well, the thing of it is, we have a special permit
You're
here.
right, they would. But
So
we have
then-
more, it is still, they
a
still
lot
have
more
to
to
go
it
through
than
the
that,
process. So I hear what you're saying.
Okay. But it would be like a public hearing, and so like the people would be able
Yeah.
to speak and say, hey, I live next door and I really don't want this, kind of thing, because of.
No, I don't think it would be, actually.
Oh, wait a minute, so it would become under a site plan?
No, it would
No.
be a special permit for any
Yeah, that's the thing.
hotel.
Yeah,
is
the
that what
special
you're
permit.
proposing?
Yeah, that's. I
Special
forgot.
permit, so
So
what does that
yes,
mean
you're
in
correct.
lay terms? Can
The
the
people could also
speak?
come
You
and
could
say
come in
they
and
wanted
scream.
it.
If
They
you
can
can't get,
speak?
Yes.
no,
Okay.
if you can't get a
Special
special
permit,
permit, you can't do anything. And
Okay,
this
Yeah,
one's under a
but yes.
special permit, that comes first.
Not just a site plan. A special permit, you get to talk.
you get to talk.
Yep.
But it is an interesting point, as Jim said, that you can still go up 5 stories anyway. You still have 60
Right.
feet
Right.
regardless.
I'm talking about the way the
But-
regulations are written now.
It lets them
for
put a bigger
motels.
building
Yeah.
on a smaller lot.
Exactly.
I get it.
So that's what I'm saying.
But it
That's-
doesn't give them the latitude to do that without the special permit. With the special permit being in place,
Okay, but
But
the
it's not
regulations
perfect.
would be changed, or this would be added, and saying, hey, you
would
can
be
do
changed.
this
Right.
now if you want to put up a hotel.
Right. And we
Okay.
would hear that.
yep,
Okay.
okay, thank you. Okay, Mary, thank you. Satisfied?
I'm fine.
You guys? Everybody okay? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. That closes this public hearing. Now, we'll just move forward to, I guess, that,
Now you're changing.
change the use, that was what I'm anxious to get to. Okay, that's it. From retail, from what I understand. Alan, you want to tell us about that? Retail to a service?
I believe we have someone here, at least one who's representing the requester.
There is someone here for the Universal Drive, 120 Universal Drive?
Hello, my name is Komal Agarwal.
Say that again.
Komal, Komal. Agarwal is Aggarwal. My LLC is called Sai Sundara 2 LLC. We've just leased the former Radio Shack space at 120 Universal Drive. And the change of use is from retail to retail services. We provide hair removal services as part of a franchise. The name of the business is going to be European Wax Center. There are 700 centers across the country. I own one in the Meriden area. This will be my second location. We only provide hair removal through waxing, and this is full body waxing. 95% of our client base is female. We do have about 5 to 10% men come in for the services. This will employ about 12 to 15 part-time employees and a full-time manager. Anything else you guys want to know? I have the floor plan here. I also have the architectural drawings. I didn't print them out because zoning might have some changes and it was too expensive to print it out.
Understood.
You got any questions?
No.
I'm good.
John, any questions? Any questions, Jim?
No, good.
Teresa?
No?
We're good, miss.
All right, thank you. Can somebody tell me what the next steps will be, though, Alan?
They're gonna deliberate, God willing, this evening, and then they'll let you know. If you stick around,
Sure.
you'll be either approved or something else.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, I'm missing nothing. I'm going to,
That's it.
can I get a motion to go into deliberation?
I'll make a motion.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Whoever.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Hello?
Yeah.
First thing up is the special permit on Washington Avenue.
All right,
We're gonna talk about the, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we approve for discussion.
We wanna get this parking, over this parking, calculation.
That's what she's saying.
Yeah, I just said
Yeah.
approve for discussion.
Mhm.
We need a second.
We don't normally
We
do
need a
that, but
second.
go ahead. You wanna do
We
it?
need a second.
Good, a second?
That's fine, I'll second.
Did you second, Jim?
I did.
Okay, good.
Okay, so
Very
Ron,
good.
Before we get into the parking, quick thing, Andy or Alan, looking at the lighting plan, I know they fixed the northern part. It appeared as though on the western side, there was some gaps, but that was actually off the property, technically on the western side where that other building is. Is that gonna be covered by lights on that building, or?
Wait. I don't care if they have no lighting. That's their problem. I care if the lighting spills over, you know what I'm saying? So, no, they're not calculating into their lighting plan, which is calculated based on the locations, heights, and power of those, or intensity of those lights. So there are lights that may be on 445 on that building or on that property that are not necessarily in this mix. So that doesn't alarm me. To me, that's 445's issue. But this here, I'm just trying to make sure that the light is not going to aggravate someone else that's off the front.
I don't believe I'll get there.
Okay, thank you.
something.
As far,
Go ahead. I'll talk about the parking.
if you'd let me.
I'd like you to.
Yes, we want to.
I took a long look at both plans, and the changes are really, in my opinion, relatively minor and aesthetic. It's always nice to have more parking, but the 15% does have more green space and more trees, and we get even more with the
Yeah,
addition of
correct.
the islands that Alan's talking about. So frankly, I'm good with either plan.
Yeah, and this was something Ron and I were both talking about last month. I feel the same way, especially about the green space. I can live, we're gonna get 200 spaces approximately.
Yeah, we're
It's a
getting
good
about
trade-off.
25 extra,
Yeah,
which
so
I can live with that.
yes, I could too.
That's 205 at 15%.
Well, but when
It's
we
gonna be
lose
about
the,
200.
but when we lose it for the additional islands, we're gonna be about 200.
Yep.
Well, thereabouts. Okay, good
Yeah.
enough.
So
But
the
are
choice
you
is
happy
to-
with the 15%?
I am okay with the 15, yes, I am.
You want Ron?
Well, technically, it's not gonna be
It's gonna
15% because it's gonna be less than that, but I'm okay with the plan showing the 15% with the applicant knowing that that's gonna be reduced when they add in the islands that are required by the regs.
Right,
Good enough. Jim?
Okay, so that's what the two of you
Right,
prefer,
right,
is the
the
15%
15.
with the adjustment for
Yes.
the islands. Fine by me.
Good. Rich?
I'm happy with the added greenery.
Okay.
No problem.
And I would just amend her motion to add the language about Jennifer talking to Attorney Lee and coming up
Sure.
with some language of what the annual report is
Why don't
supposed
you
to
just make a
contain.
motion?
So I'm just asking that the motion be
Yeah.
amended to allow our town attorney and Attorney Lee to come to an agreement on the language with regard to the annual.
You want to make a motion to approve this?
yes,
I'd like to get a motion to approve
I'll make a motion to approve
with,
with
Jim's
the
comments.
amendment comments.
Yeah.
and with staff.
Specifically 15%.
And specifically the 15% plan with the changes due to the islands that have to be put in.
Okay.
Oh, one more, not to mess things up, but I just thought, something that I hadn't focused on before, but, we've got these two entryways. And one entryway just goes into that one dedicated parking lot. You can't go anyplace else. Are you at all concerned about,
Oh, you can. Okay, you can get back out to the other driveway. I'm sorry, you can get back out to the main driveway. It's open on that end.
I stand corrected, sorry.
Good enough?
So ignore that.
Okay.
So I made a motion.
Yep.
I seconded that again.
Okay, and you got the comments in that motion? We amend that? Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion and We have a second, Jim?
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve with the comment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It carries. Okay. Very good. Let's go right over to the site plan in respect to this application, which is P18-43. Can I get a motion to approve the site plan?
Make a motion to approve site plan.
Can I have a second?
I'll
second.
There, that's fine.
Okay. Jim? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good, thank you. Back over to number 2, which is P18-41, for the amendment on the zoning regulations to allow the hotels in that zone. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve, but I'd like to discuss it.
You want to discuss it? Well,
Yes.
let's discuss it.
And I'll second then.
I'm wondering if we can address the issue that was raised by putting some very simple language in saying that this amendment only applies to sites that are not immediately adjacent to residential zones. Just throwing it out there.
I think we should just approve it the way it is, and we handle it on a special permit. There's no question, on a special permit, there's no question.
And that addresses Mary's too. The question I have is if we did that, would we have to renotice? Because the regulation would really
You would.
change, wouldn't it?
I'm kind of concerned about that a lot more than just confining it to Universal Drive. Frankly, I don't know how many IL parcels might be adjacent to a residential zone. For all I know, I don't think it would impact this particular site, but there could be a lot of implications with that. That's a higher impact thing than limiting, to a particular area.
This is, my take on this is, like, if we're really worried about it, let's look at, and tell Jennifer or whatever, let's talk ourselves about revising our IL regulation, period. But I don't know that I would do it here, because I think it just presents us with some problems. I'm not saying not to look at it. I respect what Ms. White said. I'm not looking to jam it. I just don't see it as a problem. I think this is a very positive development on Universal Drive. A fairly unique circumstance. I don't think we're going to be looking at a lot of hotels right next to people's houses. But if we're really worried about it, then we should take it, because we can still get the hotels next to people in the IL districts.
Right.
So this is a pretty limited change to our regulation. So if we really want to change it, I think we should take a look at changing the regulation.
The other issue, you do have the buffers that are required between a residential and industrial property. There's a 30-foot densely planted evergreen buffer that's required, it's in the reg, and there's also a 50-foot setback from any residential zone to an industrial zone. Those regulations, or components of your regulations, come into play heavily around Mouthrop Street, Montewies Avenue, those particular areas where you wouldn't meet the lot area requirement for a
What
hotel
about Saco Plate Road?
regardless.
I'm sorry.
Well, there's a chance, this is IL, not IG. There might be a spot, generally Sago Point Road stops, you have R, and then you have IL, it's sort of a lateral split. There may be a few, as you say, in particular that area where we had the application for ODFL.
Right, that's what I'm thinking
where you
about.
do have
Right.
That's what we're all thinking about.
Right.
Yeah.
that one northerly area. Again, you have the buffer.
Hotel, right.
That's what the way it
Which
hits
would
me.
be
This
fine.
is a fairly unique circumstance, but.
That's kind of a unique spot and all.
So
but-
you're saying, Alan, that you would feel more comfortable if we desired to limit it to Universal Drive? You think that would be a,
By comparison, I thought we had kind of discarded that as sort of too big a change under this particular proposal. So I would consider Ron's proposal to be larger than that. I guess that was my point on it.
okay.
Well, we could do universal drive, without spot zone. Well, we couldn't narrow it down any further than that to the spot.
Exactly.
We'd have
Not
to
so
do the
sure
whole
that-
thing.
Not sure you're right.
But I don't know.
hate to disclose a strategy like on the air or anything, but, I mean, my kiss of death is to set up a restriction relative to a residential zone or residentially utilized property or whatever. That's something that's a high impact phrase, that can be very limited. I don't know what the implication would be. You guys have just spotted a few of them right off, but I don't
You
know.
wanna
I
do,
think that's
you wanna
something that would
do
have to be
universal drive?
reviewed.
Or you
I'm
wanna
not sure
just
we
go with
could,
it?
Vern.
We
I'm
can
not
do it.
sure.
I think we should go with it the way we're going with it. We have a special permit on this, so we certainly got that to lean on to.
Yeah,
whatever we wanna
I'm
do.
not, I actually am okay with this only because I don't think it's any, I don't think that the impact on residential in those areas is gonna be any larger than what they can already do with a hotel. That's kind of what I'm looking at. We can go up 5 stories. And the density, I'm not seeing that as, I'm not seeing places where that's really gonna happen.
Okay, are you good with that? No, I mean, we talked about.
I just wanted to have some discussion.
Good.
Yeah, I get it.
All right,
I
good.
get it. It's an
My
interesting
motion did
thing.
not-
I don't see
No,
it either,
didn't fly.
mainly because that whole discussion we're having, the place we're seeing these is like in shopping centers. That's
Right.
really is, seems to be, when you travel, that's kind of where you see them. So I just don't see the exposure. I'm not saying it's not possible.
My motion did not include any conditions.
I understand,
Yeah.
I understand. But it's an interesting issue, much as Mary said too. I agree with all of it. We're very concerned about not infringing where people live. We still have to live in this town.
Okay.
I'm not that worried about it in this application.
Okay, we have a motion. We do have a motion and a second? Okay, who made the motion?
I did.
Okay, okay. Oh, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Very good, sir. Okay, that takes care of, all. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes for December 4th?
No.
Whoa,
Change of use.
Change use.
Oh, we didn't,
Can I make
okay.
a motion?
Can I get, yes.
I make a motion to approve the change of use.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the December 4th minutes?
I'll move to accept
Whoa,
them.
whoa, whoa, before we do, I was a little bit confused here. Maybe it's irrelevant now, but on page 2, next to the bottom paragraph, it said something about as amended 10%, 0.20%. I was a little bit confused by what that meant.
Well, you can take that up with staff. or
Page
something, 'cause I
2?
don't have to go.
Yeah, the second to the bottom paragraph on the left-hand side.
Oh, here we go.
Says
Yep.
10% in parentheses and
Oh,
then
okay.
0.20%. And I didn't understand what was being said.
Okay, so
Well,
we amended the 10%.
there's a requirement to have commercial, non-residential use, and they comply with that. The required amount is 10% of the floor area. 20% of the 150 units, next sentence, are deemed affordable. So the 10% applies to what the regulations state, the percentage of the floor area that would have to be commercial for
Okay, so
non-residential.
you're saying these numbers and the grammar are okay?
Yes,
just
and,
confused.
Really?
and we added a space between the period and the two. I don't know, add space, and she already took care of it, but anyway.
Okay, then I'm all set.
You good? Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the December 4th?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Thank you very much.
Go Clemson.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.